Hi everyone, my name's Lily and I'm the book reviewer behind Utopia State of Mind, and today I'm actually going to be doing something a little bit different. So in my current books to adaptation series, what I normally do is I read a book, I film my reactions, then I watch the film, I film reactions, and then I give you the finished project, which is them side by side. So I recently saw the trailer for Project Hail Mary and decided to read it, but not only one, it's coming in 2026, and so I feel like if I wait for this, I just won't get to it. And number two, I really need to talk with people who've read the book and their thoughts, because I have many thoughts. The first one is that since I watched the trailer first and then read the book, I do think it's worth saying that I feel like the trailer was super spoilery. If you have read the book and also seen the trailer, or, actually, yeah, that's the only audience this would actually apply to, please also let me know if you did. I made a TikTok about this, which I'll link down below, where people were saying that it's actually not, like, it's for people who've already read the book, so it's not spoilery for them. But I find partly why I'm making this video and partly why I want to talk about it is I find that book to film adaptations, you have to kind of be able to split the audience or split the concept between people who have read the book and also new audiences, right? And so, for example, a lot of people might not have seen the trailer or might not see the trailer and then originally go back to the book. For me, though, that's what I've done. And so I feel like it is super spoilery. I also don't think I'm in the very, very small minority of people who might actually do what I did. But even so, I felt like the trailer was pretty spoilery, even after reading the book, because I felt like some of the reveals, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about if you've read the book, the reveals that makes that are spoilery, it doesn't have to be in there. To me, I feel like it would be a compelling enough trailer without that. I know that some people were also commenting on that TikTok being like, oh, people want to know what X and Y, redacted looks like. And it's kind of like, well, if you really enjoy the book, and you want to see the adaptation, you probably are going to watch it anyway, even if you don't know what redacted looks like. So I just felt really angry. So I'm going to post my thoughts about Project Hail Mary now so we can chat about the book before the adaptation comes out, and then later I will remake another video about my thoughts about the film afterwards. But yes, so that was the kind of long intro about why I'm filming this, why you're seeing this, and now I'm going to chat about my thoughts about the book. In general, I feel like this author does a really good job at this conversational tone. I listened to The Martian on audiobook, actually after I watched the film, and it sounds like the main characters are directly talking to you. I really like that. I think that this would also be a fantastic audiobook. I think that this author has really nailed down that specific style, and it works really well. I think that it makes it feel very relatable in a way, but it's actually not relatable because oftentimes they're in space. And I think the second thing about that, and why it works so well in Project Hail Mary, is that this sense of disorientation and memory loss that are happening in Project Hail Mary are also very relatable, and in the sense that, we might be able to relate to that in other ways where we can't relate to, for example, being in space. And it feels like it really humanizes a character. I think oftentimes when you read science fiction, and what I hear from people who are scared about reading science fiction, is that it can feel really too sciencey, too unrelatable as well. But I think that both of these aspects, making it conversational and also having this main character who's clearly struggling and also not remembering things for reasons, makes it also very relatable. And I think that's why this author's science fiction stories have gotten the sort of attention, acclaim, and popularity that they have just by those features alone, is kind of my hypothesis. In general, I thought it was really interesting. Project Hail Mary, to me, is interesting in the fact that a lot of these stories, a lot of these space stories, feel very much like a hero journey in space. So they feel very much like someone is called to do something. They're called to save the world, so called save Earth, and they do it. And they do it because they feel that they have to. Whereas Project Hail Mary, not like that. From now on, there will be spoilers for the book. So if you haven't read the book and you want to read the book, or you don't want to get spoiled, just I would just say exit out of this video, I guess, and come back to it when you're done. So Project Hail Mary is not like that, right? So we find out by the end, and I loved the actual the use of flashbacks and the use of our time period in terms of, we're discovering things and problems are happening and the flashback is coming. This is actually one of my favorite uses of flashbacks, I feel like, in this book. Oftentimes flashbacks can sometimes be gratuitous. Sometimes you can feel like they're only there because they have to be, like they're only there because there's no other way to give that information, but this felt really seamless. And so we find out through the main character that he never wanted to be a hero, and then just ends up happening to be because he's essentially knocked out and thrown on the spaceship. I found that not only hilarious, but I found that also so deeply relatable. You read about, or maybe it's just me, you read about all these characters who feel compelled to act for, the thing, and they're like, oh my gosh, I will say goodbye to Earth forever because this is my higher purpose in life. And I'm kind of sitting there thinking, what? Is that real? And so Project Hail Mary becomes even more deeply relatable by the end, and maybe that's also why there has been, a good response to this as well. And at least for me, I really enjoyed that. To be fair, if we're going to talk right now about characterizations, I enjoyed that. I do feel like I find that I know that it's science fiction, I know that it's high action, I know that it's high stakes, high adventure, whatever, but I do feel like in the versus The Martian, I feel like in Project Hail Mary, the main character could have used a little bit more not characterization, because he's also very funny, he's very wry, very sarcastic. I think those things really work, but often what I really love in characterization are those very, very little small details about somebody, and I did feel like we were kind of missing that. To be fair, a lot is going on, but I did kind of feel like he could be very, he could be, or he could have a little bit of more characterization. To me, it does very well in this first layer of characterization, and then I really love that it's kind of like the bare minimum, and also a little bit more than the bare minimum. I don't mean the bare minimum to read, but I mean like my standards of bare minimum. But to me, to push it up to a higher character, or a character where I'm kind of like, oh, this was so funny that he was in space, and also he, whatever, hates potatoes, for example. A little bit of nod, I guess, to The Martian. But either way, those are kind of the things that I'm looking for when I really kind of really attach to a character, and I just didn't really get to that for me, even though, as I said, first layer of my basic standards for characters totally got through. I really liked this kind of wry sarcasticness, and also by the end, and you kind of get more of the vibe by the end of where I want it to be going. So that was, I guess, kind of a note that I had on characterization. Secondly, I thought when I read these books, I feel like I'm getting a little bit smarter, I guess. When we hear about space and we hear about all of these different problems you would have in space and metals, densities, and everything like that. So in general, I really enjoy these. I think they're really fun. I hate spiders. I have a deep fear of spiders. And so the fact that the side character alien essentially looks like a spider was deeply upsetting to me. The only thing that actually saved me from this is that I have aphantasia, so I didn't actually see a bunch of spiders, but it was still like a mental ick. This is not necessarily affecting my review, but I'm just sharing it with you. Just to say that even though I hate spiders, this is probably the most I've ever cared about a spider side character. I was texting my friend while I was reading it, and I was kind of like, no, this made me care more than I've ever cared about a spider. But also, too, like, if anybody touches this spider side character, I'm gonna riot, right? He ended up being so fun and so cute. I know he ends up kind of being a side character from which to propel the plot forward in a major way, because obviously at the end he kind of ends up on his best friend's planet. But I really enjoyed it, and I don't know if it necessarily saved it, but it was definitely something I wasn't really expecting. It kind of makes sense in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of, for example, that this a virusy, algae, plaguey thingy, microorganism or whatever is affecting other people's planets. And so if you have sentient space or sentient life, you've done it. But I thought it was really interesting how in this way they talk about alien and cross-cultural communication. They talk about, your concepts for things, their concepts of things. They talk about the science that they've developed versus the science that we've developed, the resources, etc. That was really fascinating to me, not even on a scientific level, but more of an interpersonal communication level. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed figuring that out. I don't know if I'm fully convinced with how they communicate to each other, right? One of the things is that the spiders can't really see. And so, or that's the vibe that I was getting from reading it. They can't really see, or they don't have really good vision. And so I'm kind of thinking, like, how are you doing this? And they kind of talk a little bit about that at the beginning, but then it gets further on where I'm kind of like, I don't know anymore how some of these things, I feel like you're jumping a little bit. But either way, I really enjoyed that specific aspect. I guess what I want to end this on is actually going back to the main theme of cowardice and the main theme of a hero's journey. I feel like we hear this concept a lot in literature, a hero's journey, the journey into the underworld, the journey to, slay a monster. And for me, I think what is fun about Product Hail Mary is it really turns it around. It tells you, it's going to be a hero's journey, until the last moment when the rug is pulled out from you and you realize it's not actually a hero's journey. But then at the end of the day, though, it ends up becoming about a hero's journey, right? It's one of those fun roller coaster moments at the end, which I really, really enjoyed. I read a lot of books. And when I find something that feels really, really unique and fresh, I just end up loving it a lot. I really loved this reversal and then re-reversal, specifically the end, the choices that we make, it's interesting because he has this amnesia, because he doesn't remember, I think he also kind of ends up tricking himself into thinking that he is the hero. And then only has this crisis of confidence where he realizes, no, actually, I was never the hero. I was forced to do this. But I think it's interesting in that conversation he has with his superior or his boss at that moment, who is kind of like the one who did this to him. She says, I know that you can come around to this. I know that internally, you are good and you will, if you wake up like this, you will do the right thing. Also, I've kind of, given you a memory amnesia thing, so fingers crossed. But I think it's really interesting, those few conversations that he has, and also the way that he feels about himself when he finds out. Because to me, you have no recognition, you have no realization from before this that that's what's going to be, that he is going to that he has doubts. Before, he's kind of like, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna make it. And then when he finds out, it becomes so much of a crisis or internal crisis for him, because the things that he's thought about himself when he comes back from amnesia are so different. And then when he reverses it as well to kind of think about, is it more important for me to get back to my planet than it is for me to save this other planet of spider alien things? He has to really decide about that, which I thought was really fascinating, having that decision actually be a decision that he makes and having it also mirror the decision he doesn't make. So that was really unique. I really liked it. In general, I'm very excited for the movie. Ryan Gosling, to me, is a very good pairing for this, because he has these moments of seriousness, but he also is so easily or so readily available to be funny and sarcastic. So I'm very excited to see this in real life or in the theaters, and I will report back and tell everyone what I thought. But in the meantime, I would really love to chat with other people in the comments to kind of figure out what people have thought, what people thought about the characterizations, what people thought about our spider friends, and what people think about in general for the trailers. I just ask that if you're going to talk about a spoiler aspect, maybe for your comment, just write spoiler so that people know, so that we can kind of chat about it all together. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you in 2026 about Hail Mary, and I will see you in the next video. Have a really great rest of your reading day, week, month, and year, and see you next year. Bye.